And what does the practicing process look like? How much time do you spend practicing that piece slowly? A lot of time or not so much?
Well, at that time when I was in college, we're talking 1980s, mid 80s, I was still practicing the way I was taught, which is the way most people until then were taught, in that we start slow and we use the metronome to get us up to speed. I don't do that anymore.
Yeah. Because of now what you know about how the brain absorbs information, correct? You don't, that's not your process anymore. But and this is, I wanted to ask you about this too, because I saw a Facebook post in which you were describing the danger of the middle tempos, right? Because there's the extreme slow tempos, and then there's the middle tempos in which we tend to get stuck, and you can never leave them sometimes. So your philosophy nowadays is you practice at 85%, correct, or thereabouts, and then build it up from there. So not quite at the full tempo, but just slightly slower, right?
Well, there's still a lot of open questions there. But as I study and observe how the brain absorbs and then delivers information, and what happens when we're about to walk on stage, what is our sentiment? I began to realize that the middle speeds are a danger. They give us a false sense of security. Something that's 120. If I'm going to practice at 90, it kind of sounds neat. I can phrase, everything comes out clean, I can articulate everything. But as a wind player, and I guess even violinists, the kind of stroke we use to articulate at 90 is completely different than what we use at 120. So everything we learn at 90 is a waste of time. We will never use that technique. And God forbid if you try to use the same articulation of 90 when you play 120, you're going to stutter. Mm-hmm. You can't do that because your tongue is going to be doing too much work, and it's going to get tired in the middle of your Mozart concerto. You can't do that. So the only way we can learn is if we put ourselves into real live action. What is it that we're looking for? We want our Mozart concerto to be at 120. Then we need to practice that. Sometimes that can be difficult. So we need to slow down a little bit. But how much? I am guessing about 15% of our metabolism. Why? Because our metabolism, our blood, our heartbeat, moves about 15% up and down during the day naturally. There's some natural sway. After lunch, our metabolism may go down, and then early evening we're up and running. So this is all natural. So I put my practicing in there. If the Mozart concerto is 120, I'm going to start practicing at 108, and I will take it to 130 something to be on the safe side, so that 120 is centered in the middle. This means that when I walk on stage and I'm nervous and I see that there are 2,000 people there waiting to hear me, and I go, oops, what do I do now? There's only one version in my mind. The only way my brain knows how to do this is 120. Mm-hmm. Because the brain, our conscient thought is just a little line here on top of our eyes. Everything else is subconscious. It's out of our knowledge, out of our control, from heartbeat to cellular function to a host of other things necessary for us to play, in which we don't even know about. We think we know because we press two fingers and it comes out an A, but we don't even control the finger. It's controlled by nerves and tendons and muscles and the brain. So the point of this is that if we condition our brain to to play that 90. At the moment of stress, when there are 2,000 people looking at you, the brain has its own alarm system that protects us, right? It's the same thing that makes us a little iffy if we're walking down at night and we hear somebody walking behind us. We go immediately into danger mode. Well, we go into that danger mode when we're walking on stage, and then the brain is going to come with a very easy solution. Why don't you play the 90 that you play so beautifully? And we go, no, I can't do that. I have to do the 120 because this is the concert. No. Hear me out. Do the 90. And we get this divide. I don't get nervous, Nick. I can go on stage to play the most difficult thing ever. I don't get nervous because my brain is at peace. We only know one version. It has to be at this speed. The fingers have to stay at that position for that split second and then go here, there. Everything in technique is planned. So there's no going wrong. Now, I want to make sure of two things before we go on this. Practicing slow is very important because we clean, we decide which fingering we're going to do, what's more efficient. But in terms of the conversation of Mozart here, I'm talking about doing 60 or 70. Way slow, so slow that it is not viable musically. We can't phrase like that, but we can clean fingerings. We can see that the intervals are in tune. There's a lot of good things that come. And it's also relaxing, but 60 or 70 lacks emotional content because it's musically inviable. The other thing I wanted to make sure is when we do etudes and scales, we have to do every speed. Then it is a good idea to go notch by notch on the metronome because our fingers are supposed to do everything at every speed. And that's what scales and etudes are for. But anything that's a musical content that has a specific style, specific way of playing, we should then jump straight to near speed and stay there and only feed the brain that which is to be performed on stage.
So say you're learning a brand new piece like you were for Prague Spring. Would you practice it very, very slowly for an extended period of time to kind of get used to it, and then you would immediately bump up, skip those middle tempos to the 85% and then practice there, correct?
Essentially, yes. Mm-hmm. As for practicing slow, I would practice only 2 or 3 times, enough to know what I need to know. What are the issues? What are the fingerings? Where do I breathe? What is the pitch situation? What are the weird intervals? This is what I'm going to do. I need to blow more there. I play 2 or 3 times the passage and I know. And then I go to speed. And we can't do that, like start playing at speed because it may be difficult. So we divide it in groups. And I'm going to do ta-da-da, freeze, ta-da-da, freeze, ta-da-da. And later I do ta-da-da, ta-da-da, ta-da-da. And I go in and patch it together like a puzzle. That way, my brain has specific information about what happens on each interval, and I need to intelligently separate those groups so that they agree with the phrasing. But when I freeze, there is no information going into the brain. No muscle is moving, so there's no memorization. Mm-hmm. And then I play the next group, and so on. And then I start patching them together. 2 groups, then I do 3 groups. By the time I come back and do 4, I already have the piece.
So a group could be a bar or 2? Could it be just a couple of notes and then you tape those notes together, like 2 16th notes, then 3 16th notes, and so on?
It depends on how difficult the piece is. But let's get your concerto. Pam pam, padabadam, 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 padabadam. We do each arpeggio separately. Because if we never play the Mozart bassoon concerto and we go at speed, bum, ba, ba, da, 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 we may find trouble because it's too much information for the brain. And the brain makes a mistake. And then a few notes later, that mistake appears in our playing. The neurological mistake happens earlier. And then there's still some lag, and we scramble something. And then when we miss a note or do a blurb, we blame ourselves. Oh, no, I don't know how to play this. But it's wrong. It's not our fault. It is simply that the brain didn't know what to do. And we consciously, on this little line here, we think, no, we got to play, it's going to work. It doesn't work like that. So we continue blowing, hoping that the next arpeggio is going to be better. It won't. And at some point, the brain gives up. Okay, you want to play? You're going to play by yourself. Just drop any finger. And that's our mistake. Our mistake is how we treat the brain. And we should learn how to recognize how is it that the brain actually absorbs and retrieves information. Because if we do it arpeggio by arpeggio, first da da da, then da 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 da, and then later we do two ba da ba da ba da ba da, we're going to condition our brain, condition our concentration the same way we would condition a muscle if we go to the gym. We're going to condition the brain to think of two arpeggios next to each other. Then we go back and we do three arpeggios. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, until pretty soon we can do tam pa ba da 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 ba da, and then it becomes easier. Pretty soon you can play those same arpeggios in a million times faster. For the brain, it doesn't matter. One note or 12 is all the same because we have this entire mess to do the thinking of so much stuff that we don't even know about, that adding another arpeggio is not a big deal.
Yeah. So enough of us, when stress kicks in, like you said, we go to a comfort zone. And that comfort zone, if you spend too much time practicing in the middle tempos, will be the middle tempos. And then your technique could crash and burn, correct?
Yeah, because the middle tempos carry an emotional basis. It's musically viable. Mm-hmm. We can do bum, bum, da, da, dum, ba, ya, da, da. It begins to sound like music. We know we can't perform it like that, but we can phrase it, and it's kind of neat. So we begin to get emotionally attached to that. And that gives us a reassurance that we're doing well. We can play this thing. And that is the false sense of security. We think we can do it, but we can't. Because none of this is real. This is never going to work.
Yeah, so slow practice has to be completely contextually removed from the tempo that you're trying to arrive at.
Correct.
Yeah, amazing. This is going to save a lot of people because personally, I tend to get stuck in those middle tempos, and you can stay there forever, seemingly, and it's just it's a nightmare because you feel like you're never going to get out. If you're trying to get up to 140, for example, it's
an incredible waste of time.
Yeah.
And it leads nowhere.
Yeah.
But so what we need to understand here is that as much as we would like to think we are powerful and we can play our instrument, we consciously don't. It is our subconscious that plays our instruments, according to the information we consciously put there. When we practice, we feed our memory, and we already establish that playing music, playing our instrument is a priority. That means there are specific hormones and chemicals that go into the brain and establish, wait, this is priority. If we're walking down the street and we see a nice car, say, oh, that's a nice car. In 3 seconds, we forgot we ever saw that car. because it's not a priority unless you're a car collector. But we're musicians. If we go and play a scale and we notice the F sharp is wrong, it's going to sound an alarm, and our subconscious knows what to do because this is a priority. This cannot happen. So if we put the wrong information in the brain, it's going to come to haunt us. But by the same token, if you put the right information there, it's always going to be offered to us on a silver plate. That's the beauty of it. So the brain is going to memorize not only what notes, what pitch, and what sound quality we need, but little things we can't even measure, like exactly how long that finger needs to be at that place before it moves. And we can't measure that, not even with time, because this is bioelectrical and biomeasurements which we don't have any access to. And it's going to be based on a collection of other hormones and lights buzzing up there. If we present the brain with a complete description of what we want to happen on stage, that is what will be memorized. And so we cannot make mistakes. For the brain, we cannot make mistakes. We need to sight read in tempo perfectly. Of course, this is unreasonable. So our dialogue should be about how do we make this happen so the brain thinks we're sight reading perfectly in tempo without mistakes. And then we develop strategies to get there, like stopping every few notes, every arpeggio, everything clear, everything okay, everything is clean. Okay, then we go to the next one. But if I practice then pam pam paragada, that is the same tempo as concert speed. Padabada, padabada, padabada. So the brain is never going to learn a different timing. The arpeggio is always going to be at that speed. And we're going to find that we can move that speed, So we prepare our concerto and we go to stage for the first rehearsal. It just so happens that the conductor is one of those early music freaks that they think they have met Mozart in a medium meeting with somebody who gave you the email address to a dead person. Right? And they will tell you, no, actually Mozart told me last night in a dream that it has to be faster. If it is within that 15% their metabolism naturally navigates, you're going to find that you can do pam pa, you can do that. If it goes beyond that, we can't, because we didn't prepare for it.
So if the goal tempo is 120, you would practice at 110, 115, 120, and then beyond that, right? 125, 130, just in case.
Well, it's to give it a rounder approach, because as you well know, as a performer, all sorts of bugs can come into our minds when we play. We need to make sure our concentration is prepared. As we are approaching that big, nasty passage, we are realize that somebody's sitting in the audience that we don't like, or we have an argument with, or we realize that we forgot to pay the electric bill. There's always something that's going to come and kick in our concentration. So it's good to leave some room. Saying, whatever happens, I know I can't play that passage even under stress because I practice 132. Even knowing I don't want to play there, but I know I can, and if I set my mind to, so when we slow down to our concert tempo, we know that we have leeway in our concentration to get it done.
So psychologically, it's just helpful because you know that you're not operating at your limit. Your limit is beyond that, and so you kind of settle into, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.